My name is Meyer. I am 29 years old, and I need you to hear this, not because I want your sympathy, but because I carried this inside me for 6 years and it almost broke me completely. And I am done staying silent. I grew up in a quiet suburb outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Nice neighborhood, good schools, a mom who packed my lunch every morning, and a dad who never missed a single school event. Sunday dinners where everyone talked over each other and laughed too loud, and my grandmother snuck me extra dessert when my mom was not looking. I genuinely believed I was one of the lucky ones. My dad called me his little star. Every report card, every achievement, every small when he looked at me like I had hung the moon. I worked so hard to keep earning that look. Late nights studying, pushing myself constantly. Making him proud meant everything to me. When I was 18, I got into university in Chicago on a full academic scholarship. The night that email came through, my mom cried at the kitchen table, and my dad lifted me off the ground in a hug that lasted so long my feet left the floor. It was one of the happiest nights of our lives. Tuition was covered, but living expenses still needed handling. A few weeks before I left, my dad sat me down and looked me straight in the eyes. He said, "Meyer, do not worry about money. That is my job. You just go to Chicago and become everything I already know you are." I did not question it for 1 second, because he was my dad, and my dad had never once let me down. For 4 years I studied hard, worked weekends at a campus coffee shop, and called home every Sunday without fail. Everything felt warm. Everything felt safe. I graduated at 22 with a finance degree and a job offer that made me cry. My parents flew in for the ceremony. My dad stood in that crowd with tears streaming down his face, and after it was over he held me close and whispered, "I am so proud of you, my little star." 2 months later I walked into a bank for a routine loan application. The officer looked at her screen, then at me, then back at her screen. She said, "Ms. Meyer, there is a significant amount of existing debt already registered under your name." I smiled and said there must be some mistake. She turned the screen toward me. $135,000. My father's handwriting on the original paperwork. The same handwriting that signed every birthday card he ever gave me. The smile left my face, and the warmth I had carried inside me my entire life began to crack. I do not remember driving home from that bank. I just remember my kitchen floor. Cold tiles, the room going dark as evening came, and I did not move to turn on a single light. Just me and that number repeating over and over inside my head. $135,000. 4 years. Every Sunday call. Every proud smile. Every time he said, "Don't worry, Meyer. I have handled everything." I sat there until I could not feel the floor beneath me anymore. Then I got up, put the kettle on, and called my father. I had made a decision on that floor. No screaming, no breaking down, because I needed the truth more than I needed to fall apart. I said, Dad, I went to the bank today. Tell me everything, please." The silence on his end said everything before he spoke a single word. And then slowly, in a voice so hollow and ashamed I barely recognized it, it all came out. The year I left for Chicago, his business had collapsed. A major project fell through. Partners disappeared with money owed. Debts piled up faster than he could manage, and he panicked silently the way proud fathers do when they cannot bear to be seen failing. He had my information from college paperwork. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself he would fix it before I ever found out. He told himself he was still protecting me. He never fixed it. My mother found out 2 years in. She stayed quiet because she was terrified. She kept believing he would make it right. She kept waiting for a moment that never came. So for 4 years, through every Sunday call, every holiday dinner, every moment that felt like love, they both stayed completely silent. When we hung up, I sat back down on that kitchen floor and cried in a way I had not cried since I was a little girl. Not for the money, for the version of my family I had believed in my whole life. For every Sunday call that felt like safety while something else was quietly happening underneath. That was what broke me open that night. Not the debt, the distance between what I believed we were and what had actually been happening all along. But even sitting there in the dark, something inside me was already deciding. I had built myself before from nothing but hard work and hope, and I was going to do it again. I did not let myself stay broken. There were mornings in those first weeks where the weight hit me the moment I opened my eyes. There were nights I sat at my kitchen table staring at numbers that made me feel sick. But every single morning I got back up. Because falling apart was never really an option for me. Within 2 weeks I found a financial advisor named Sandra. Sharp, direct, experienced. The kind of woman who looks at a disaster and immediately talks about solutions. I laid everything out in front of her. The loan, the missed payment, for years of interest compounding quietly while I was in Chicago studying finance without knowing I was already drowning in debt. She looked at it all. Then she looked at me, she said, "This is going to take time and discipline, Meyer. But you are going to get through this." I wrote those words on a sticky note and put it on my bathroom mirror. I budgeted down to every dollar, freelance accounting work on evenings and weekends, every meal cooked at home, every unnecessary expense cut completely. I became someone who knew exactly where every cent was going at all times, and in the middle of all of that, I had to figure out what to do about my parents. That part kept me up far more than any spreadsheet ever did. The debt had a process, concrete step, timeline, paperwork. I could handle that, but the trust, the quiet, completely assumed trust one had given my parents my entire life, that had no roadmap, no payment plan, no clear moment where I could say, okay, that part is healed now. My mother called every few days in those early months. She cried every time. She said they never meant to hurt me, that they had been scared and made a terrible choice. I always picked up. I always listened, but I never pretended that her tears made $135,000 disappear. My father called just once, his voice so quiet I barely recognized it. He said, Meyer, I know I have no right, but please do not let this destroy our family. I was 22 years old. I was carrying a debt I never agreed to. I was rebuilding credit I never damaged. I was working every single day to fix something I never broke, and I was also being asked to hold everyone else together. I have never felt so exhausted in my entire life. 3 years. That is how long it took me to pay back every single dollar of a debt I never chose to carry. 3 years of discipline. 3 years of sacrifice. 3 years of Saturday mornings at my desk doing freelance work while everyone else I knew was living the kind of life I had planned for myself before all of this happened. But I did it. The morning Sandra called to tell me the final payment had cleared, I was sitting in my car in the parking lot outside my office, phone in both hands, sunlight coming through the windshield. She said, Meyer, it is done. You are completely cleared. I sat there without moving for a long moment, and then I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and I cried. Not from sadness, from something so deep and so relieved it felt like putting down a weight I had carried so long I had forgotten what standing straight felt like. My name was clean. My credit rebuilt completely. Everything taken without my knowledge had been repaid without anyone's help. I had done it entirely on my own. When I was finally ready, I drove back to Nashville. I sat at that same Sunday dinner table, the same bread basket in the middle, the same quiet house. My father looked older. My mother looked tired in a way that went beyond just years passing. I told them both, calmly and clearly, what those 3 years had cost me. Not in dollars. In the way I now held trust more carefully. In the way safety had become something I built for myself instead of assuming it came from other people. My father did not make a single excuse. He looked at me across that table and his voice broke when he said, You deserved so much better from us, Meyer. I'm so deeply sorry. My mother took my hand and held it. I did not forgive them completely that evening. Forgiveness is not one single moment. It is something that happens slowly and quietly over time, mostly for your own sake. But I stayed for dinner, and when I drove back to Chicago that night, something inside me shifted. Not into perfect place, but toward it. I had paid a debt I never agreed to carry. I had rebuilt something from damage I never caused. And I had done all of it without losing who I was. The most important person who will ever have your back is you. I learned that the hard way, and I will never forget it.